I'm going to stop calling myself a Christian because I do not recognize the God or the Jesus that so many of the people who call themselves Christians are following. I said, well, I'm not quite ready to go there yet, but I see your point. So what would you call yourself if it weren't Christian? And she said, I'm a follower of Jesus. And I thought this was a very interesting way of beginning to reclaim some language. And one other person, a woman named Cameron Trimble, who leads what they're calling a convergence, a rethinking, an awakening of evangelicalism. And Cameron said, in this new convergence, I've been struggling with whether or not we should call it resistance, because resistance feels like it's defensive, when what we're really doing is just following God and listening to what God has said. So anyway, as they thought through, as we all thought through what was next in our lives, I decided that I was going to stop being afraid to speak out. Because for many years, I served in places where I would get in trouble if I actually truly reflected what I thought God was calling me to understand and to proclaim. And I realized that there's just too much at stake. And that if leadership is going to be that leadership, then we need to lead in the light of God and not afraid that someone's going to get mad at us. So that was one of the things that I decided that I was going to agree to as part of this convergence of leadership. But what I will say is that as we sat at the table, I don't know how, but I didn't for some reason notice that my mom was sitting off in a corner listening to this conversation. And I told you about my mom last week, but maybe you weren't here. But my mom was a SNCC activist with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. She was a major leader in the movement. She still is. She's a major part of the remembrance and the proclamation of Black Power. And this is a major legacy that my mom has left. But as she sat there listening to this new generation of activists, she just had a smile on her face because people have been wondering, who's going to step forward? Who are the leaders going to be? Who are we going to listen to? And she said, what we're seeing here is that we're going to be listening to y'all. We're going to be listening to all these people who are stepping up now. And there are going to be voices that we didn't know to look to before. But this is where it's beginning. I was inspired by that. But thinking of leadership again, my daughter, I strapped my little 2-year-old daughter onto my back, walked with my husband onto the subway and with a dear friend in the clergy, and we went down in D.C. to the Women's March on Washington. And as she rode on my back, my daughter taught me some things. First of all, she was very excited to be there. She thought this was perfect, to see all these people who were in such a good mood. And I wasn't expecting that because D.C. felt rather eerie this week. Walking down the street on Thursday night, I was headed to the African American History Museum, and there were people gathered in front of the National Press Club where they were hosting the Deplorable. Have you heard of this awful? Anyway, so they were hosting a Deplorable, and so there were people there who were very angry. It was sort of like an anarchist vibe. And I felt afraid. I heard something that sounded like a gunshot. They were burning stuff. It was an interesting moment. It was a scary moment. And I was like, what is happening in Washington, D.C.? Which I think is a question that I need to ask again and again and again. But anyway, so after feeling the eeriness of Thursday night, preparing for the weirdness of Friday, when we got there on Saturday, there was joy. And there was a shout. Every now and then, there would be just random shouting, right? And it felt like, we should try this, actually. Just yell. Yell! Yeah, right? Woo, it felt like this. Now imagine that that's 100,000 people, and then another 100,000 are coming. Because they came, over a course of time. And then another 100,000 are coming. And the shouts got so loud. And the earth shook, y'all. The earth shook. And our shouts do that. Our shouts can shake this earth. We are not hopeless. This was a new day, and it was beautiful to see the faces of God's beloved who didn't know what to expect. But as I stood there with my daughter and the crowd that was getting bigger and bigger, my husband and I huddled closely together with our friend. I started to wonder, well, we can't hear any speeches. Like, what are we supposed to be doing here? And what would happen? I looked over to the side, actually this way, and there was a little girl. I would guess she was probably like 8 or 9. And every now and then she would get people, she'd say, "Show me what democracy looks like." Does anyone know the response? This is, "Show me what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like." This is what was happening, right? So this little girl would start the chants, and then there was another group of girls. And those girls would start some new chant that God bless whoever their parents or their schools were had taught them so that they were ready. And these children led us, y'all. And at one point, my daughter started her own chant that I'm going to teach you. This is her favorite song. It's what, after we say our prayers and I put her to bed, she sings. And you're going to learn this, so I'm going to sing it for you, and then I'm going to teach it. Our Abba in heaven, give us your love. We are knocking at your door for love and peace. You're going to learn this. Back and forth. Our Abba in heaven, our Abba in heaven, give us your love. Give us your love. We are knocking at your door. We are knocking at, do the symbol. For love and peace. For love and peace. Okay, we're going to do this together now. Our Abba in heaven, give us your love. We are knocking at your door. For love and peace. My daughter taught the crowd this song, and she sang it again. You know how children don't mind a lot of repetition? And by the time we did it again and again and again, everybody knew it, and all of a sudden, my 2-year-old was leading. And that's biblical, of course. And a little child shall lead them. And that was what we saw. Now, a lot of us have been feeling, and particularly now, the week after Martin Luther King Day, people have been asking, who's going to be the new king? Who's going to be the next person who's going to be the major leader of this movement? And some might say it's William Barber, right? Maybe it is. A disciples minister. We're very proud of the work he does in North Carolina and across this country. Maybe it's him. But what I believe is that if we've actually progressed, if there were to be such a leader, that it couldn't be a man. But anyway, but people are wondering, was it going to be Barack Obama? Everybody wants to hear him say something that's going to make us feel better in this moment. We're like, come on, President. We see Michelle's face. We know you're not happy. Why are you smiling? Go ahead and tell us, rally us. And people have been wanting this from him since he was elected on hope and change, right? So we started out in 2009 thinking, oh, good. Finally, the change that we wanted, the change that we can believe in is coming. And some things changed. People got health care. I don't know how he did it. But they got health care, and maybe they're taking it away. We can fight this. But people, we were waiting for something, and we thought maybe Barack Obama would do it, but how could he? When we left him there and didn't organize all the time to keep our elected officials to actually do their jobs in Congress. We left him out there. We didn't show up. And now, hundreds of thousands of people marched. And other hundreds of thousands will be inspired by it, despite whatever lies they'll hear on television. And this is a moment where we can take our country back. I don't mean this, this is not a partisan message at all, because don't even get me started on the Democrats. But this is saying that we are called to follow a God who said to protect the poor and to stand up for the oppressed and not to be afraid in the face of a leader who would step on your throat, right? So we can do this, y'all. We can definitely do it, but we need to look for the leadership in different ways. Now, our scripture reading from Isaiah this morning says, listen up. Listen up. God, who formed you in your mother's womb, has chosen you to be a light to the nations. You, specifically you. I am pointing at all of you. God has chosen you to be a light to the nations. And I love the imagery that Isaiah uses here. He says that you are an arrow in God's quiver. And I know some of you may not know what a quiver is. That's the thing where you hold the arrows, right? So you are an arrow in God's quiver. And as I was talking this through with my dad and my colleague, Nichelle Guidry, we were planning out what I would say to you this morning, and they both noticed things in that imagery. My dad, the poet, said, well, every arrow has a barb, which is the head of the arrow, and it's very sharp. And I thought, well, that's interesting now, because if I'm an arrow and I'm sharp, then that means that God has sharpened me for this moment. And God has sharpened you. God has given you the strength and the shape that is necessary to do what you have been appointed to do. So that's one thing. And the thing that Sister Nichelle noticed was that an arrow always has a target. An arrow has a target. And if you are an arrow in God's quiver, then God has a target that you are meant to hit. And this is what Clay is going to be working on in his group, is helping people think through what's my target and how am I going to sustain myself to get ready for this moment. You have a target. And for some people that might be on the PTA board, making sure that the school is doing its very best for our children. For someone else, it might be to actually stand up for the immigrant children in their classrooms as teachers and to make sure that they're protected radically. For someone else, it might be you're an attorney and you're going to find a new way to stand up for people who need defense in our system that does not provide it. Maybe you are a banker and you work with people who are rejoicing in evil. And maybe you rethink what that looks like for you. Maybe your target is to run for office. Or maybe your target is to hold the ones who are in office accountable for once. Maybe your target is that you're going to sit and write every Sunday to as many people who represent you as possible to tell them what you're expecting from them. You have a target arrow. And so the question is, are you ready? Are you ready to be deployed into this world that has been waiting for this? Are you ready to rise up, arise and shine, because your light has come, church? Arise, 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 get up. You are the arrows in the quiver. Pierce through. Pierce through, folks. You can pierce through all that they try to put us through. You can be a shooting arrow of light that will bring light in the darkness. Pierce through what they have tried to tell you you can't do. Pierce through when they are saying that you don't deserve goodness, that you shouldn't be able to love, that you are unworthy. Pierce through the oppression that would try to stop you. Pierce through it all because you can. You are God's. And there is nothing that God cannot do. And there was a loud shout. And that shout shook the earth. Shake the earth, church. Shake the earth, church. One last chant that my daughter also taught. She found a sign on the subway, and it said, "Love, not hate, will make America great." Love, not hate, will make America great. 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 All right, church.